I need some traction. You need some traction. Let's get some traction.
Hello, everybody.
Well, hi, guys.
I'm back. I'm A/B testing the tucked-in shirt versus untucked. So let me know what you think on Twitter. But yeah, so this is, again, my name is Garrett. Thank you for being here this morning. I write about tech for Bloomberg News based in Toronto. And this is Rob from TaskRabbit. And Rob, why don't you just sort of kind of, I'm sure most people know of TaskRabbit, but sometimes I'm in a conference and everyone's like, this, and I'm like, I need to Google that. So like, to save everyone to Google, just in case there's a few people, give us a quick just overview of what TaskRabbit is, what you do there, and the journey, like the point in TaskRabbit's journey that is out right now.
Sure, so TaskRabbit is an on-demand chore service. Unfortunately, we're not here in Vancouver, but I see, and we're part of kind of the broader sharing economy of families that includes Uber and Lyft and Airbnb and Instacart. And really, obviously, from the standpoint of TaskRabbit, we were founded in 2008. So people like to call us kind of the OG of the sharing economy, which means we pioneered kind of this movement once upon a time. And where we are sort of 8 years into our path forward now is clearly the sharing economy has taken on a whole new sort of revolution or a whole new economy that is changing the future of work. And from that standpoint, we're happy to be at the forefront of that movement. We're in 19 cities, 18 of them in the US, and then also in London. So we're going through obviously a period of very high growth, but also really beginning to understand what unit economics should look like, right, as well as constantly monitoring the changing investor landscape.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad that TaskRabbit is sort of the company we're using to tackle this topic, because when you think about like sharing economy and like, you know, what Uber's doing all over the world with its competitors, I mean, like spending $100 million a month in China alone, I mean, that's not sustainable unit economics necessarily, right? And so, I mean, can you talk a little bit about just like in general the sharing economy and this sort of like land grab and, you know, just all out war that's going on? And I know there's different industries, you know, car sharing versus Airbnb and then what you do, but I mean, in your own industry, there has also been these kind of battles, and just, I mean, where are we at right now in how this sharing economy thing is evolving?
It's definitely a different life stage than it was a year ago. Okay. I think, you know, when you saw a lot of these sharing economy companies come to market, there was definitely a sort of winner-take-all mentality where aggressive in-market spends, a clear focus on acquisition, and a big land grab for understanding kind of what users were going to do with their categories on a daily basis. And from the standpoint of the shift or the change in mindset right now is clearly the most popular word or the most discussed topic in every interview and in every boardroom right now is not growth, but profitability. And that's a real fundamental shift in the way that I think startups think, the way that boards and founders have had to think. And what that causes is obviously a different discussion. One that is much more around retention, and one that is much less around possibly entering new markets, or at least figuring out how to just scale through growth.
But like, I mean, you're in 19 cities, which is great. You're dominant in a lot of those places, but that's only 19 cities, right? I mean, aren't you worried that, you know, Amazon or Google or someone with larger reach and bigger pockets is going to decide one day to try to overtake you and go for the other, you know, 1,000 cities that are in the world?
Well, I think you heard Marco earlier today, right, from Thumbtack, and he's in every county in the United States. That is not something that we have aspired to do. We do have 50,000 taskers. We have a very strong understanding of what quality looks like and how to offset churn in the marketplace, which is actually one of the largest factors of what quality services look like, is keeping and retaining a broad set of people who perform quality services on a consistent basis. There's always clearly the chance or the sort of the idea that competition will come in and overtake your markets. But the truth is that at least for us in our business, and I think this is part of the disciplined approach we've taken, is there's a key set of metrics or demographics or other sort of city factors that allow us to assess which markets to approach at the right time. And for us to understand that, one is we've raised $50 million and been around 8 years. Fundamentally, that is very different than the rest of the sharing economy for the most part. And the reason we've been able to do that is the very disciplined approach we've taken around looking at different markets, around expansion in general, and then of course looking at the fundamentals of growth that actually will drive a healthy, sustainable business in the long term that gets to profitability and of course generates returns for its investors.
Mm-hmm. So profitability, that's something I believe your CEO has said you're trying to get to this year. How's that going?
It's going good. It's hard, but it's going good. We'll be profitable by the end of the year. Okay. And that is something that we believe, one, sets us apart from our competition, but two, also allows us to control our own destiny. Now, I think it's important to understand what profitability really means, because I think there's a lot of discussion and dialogue around city profitability, category profitability, company profitability. Like, it's very, very difficult to, I think, to really get to the bottom of what profitability means. For us, it simply means freedom. It means we can actually make our own decisions. We become cash flow positive. And at that point, we then have the ability to go into new markets, invest in acquisition in a more aggressive way, and candidly, just be able to run the company and in a way that doesn't have to always respond to what the market or the competition is saying. And that's a tremendous, and from the standpoint of marketing, it's a tremendous opportunity for me and for the company overall, because then we get to get much more aggressive with looking at LTV and looking at our customer acquisition costs that we haven't historically been able to do.
The conversation of like, okay, when do we either shift to focusing on profitability versus just growth at all costs, or growth at whatever cost we can pull in from our investors, is obviously a relevant conversation for every startup that's trying to grow quickly, and it's a difficult conversation. And like, when do you decide to do that? I mean, for TaskRabbit, like, what did that conversation specifically look like for you? I mean, was it like, oh, we're looking at the market, and if we continue burning at this rate, we're not going to be able to raise? Or was like, what was the catalyst that got you to decide now's the time to shift to focusing on profitability versus just growing?
Yeah, I think there was a couple of things. One is the company has always been pretty consistent around its diligence, and I would say that every good startup at least starts there. They don't always make those decisions to stay there, but in general, what we did is we looked at and got a very clear sense of, and again, I think my recommendation to every startup at any stage would be get a handle on this in terms of looking at customer acquisition costs in a fully loaded way, what it really looks like, including promotions and discounts, including all the things that you're paying into the market around media. Actually really understand that. And when that is actually fully loaded, you'll then begin to understand what channels are actually very efficient and which ones are not. And I think that we took a hard look at that. Mm-hmm. In a way that we started to say, we took a look at, one, what is customer acquisition cost in reality? Two, let's unblend them, meaning like look at them by channel. And what you'll see is like non-branded and branded keywords and search and even social are pretty effective, and everyone's really aggressive in those channels, and there's no secret to that. The other areas are actually, you then have to continue to grow. And when you start to then look at where you've seen the same graph multiple times today, like high impact, high energy, quadrant type tactics, those can be expensive. And that's where your strategy lives. And whether it be in outdoor or in radio or in any other sort of like actual paid media channel, that's where you actually need to be very diligent about breaking that down and understanding what the acquisition cost is to finally put together a plan that makes financial sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because it's like you said with, online marketing, I mean, there's all these great tools that marketers have to kind of optimize that, but everyone's using it, right? Like everyone knows it. Everyone knows the latest playbook for that kind of marketing and whether it's using retargeting or finding, new customers. I mean, is there still room for like innovation or doing like totally off the wall things when it comes to marketing, to get your product out there?
I think so. I mean, I think consumers have gotten pretty savvy in terms of understanding what's marketing. And that's a good and a bad thing. One is, I think they're more open to good marketing more than ever. The bad thing is they're also more annoyed by bad marketing. And unfortunately, bad marketing is pretty prevalent. So what that means is you have to find really interesting ways to tell stories. And good startups have the playbook where they lean into search and they lean into social, and then they get very, very good at PR. And PR is a still key strategy, whether it's in content or in pure media relations. That's an area where good PR people make great contributions to customer acquisition costs, because earned media is generally seen as free. And so that's how I think there's still an opportunity to play, but you're right, it takes a lot of hard work.
Yeah. The, your company is very sort of, city-based, right? I mean, you go to a new city, you figure out the market, you do things uniquely, and I'm sure there's a lot of startups out here who are doing similar things. Like, how do you think about going to a new market? What's the playbook for opening something out? Do you just say, okay, well, these are the things that worked in Seattle, let's put them in LA, or do you start from scratch? How do you expand?
It's a great question. The idea of localization, I think, is a really key factor in the way that we assess markets, but it's also the way that we assess media. In that, I'll give you an example. In LA, our business, by the way, is fairly seasonal. We do a couple of things on a consistent basis. We do handyman and house cleaning, delivery, and moving. Those in LA, by the way, are non-seasonal activities. People move in LA 12 months a year. It's sunny all the time. Yet, when you look at New York, moving is something that happens in the spring and the fall. It's very hot, it's very cold. Spring and the fall are where that market really starts to get very category specific. And I think if you look at your markets, one, around their category or just broadly their service behaviors, you'll start to unpack messaging. And that's one part that we look at from a marketing standpoint. But then yes, we also look at the overall market dynamics, things like city density, things like is there actual public transit that's any good? Obviously, the biggest example is ride sharing in San Francisco, and that's how it got started, because there's no public transit and the taxi system was terrible. And so you start to look at even those factors that help you understand, one, where you could place media as a good opportunity, but two, the consumer behaviors that might give you an opportunity to actually arbitrage either competition or just consumers doing it themselves in a way that feels really natural.
Yeah. So like, when you decide though to go into a new market, I mean, like, do you just set up shop and start testing by seeing how the product works, or do you do a bunch of research beforehand? Do you like hire consultants or something to tell you about like, this is New York and this is how you should think about it?
So one, we start with supply. So that's in a marketplace, we can't go to market and provide services or in our categories that don't have supply. So we get a sense of the market in terms of what that looks like in a few months by doing some recruiting and some onboarding. We then, of course, take a look at similar cities that have similar makeups that allow us to get some amount of insight in terms of previous markets. But the easiest and actually best place to start is actually in search. Is keyword search and other places where you get free information that then can allow you to craft marketing messages and generate some very easy and cheap learnings to craft some amount of go-to-market strategy that feels like you can achieve your goals.
Right, okay. So if you've got sort of like a budget for marketing and then you're like, okay, we need to spend a certain amount on, TV, radio, whatever, internet, PR, how do you, like what's your methodology to decide, this is how we divvy it up?
So we obviously start with the most efficient places first. And what we do is we have an LTV, you should know your LTV, and a good company does. And your LTV is driven primarily, and we've seen actually a bunch of different people say the same thing today, which is interesting, is start with retention. It's the least sexiest, most important thing that your board should be telling you to do every day. And when you get good at that, you drive your LTV higher. What that does is you then take the ratio of whatever you want, 1 to 3, 1 to 5, and you back out your customer acquisition costs, and so you get a number. And that number then, you can go to market and say, what are we going to spend in total in our acquisition in order to actually achieve that customer acquisition cost or that CAC. And that's where we start. And we build the plan bottoms up in terms of looking at search and social and PR to believe that we can actually achieve our forecast in a way that's meaningful. And then we make some strategic bets, probably that will flex above that CAC in key seasons or key months, but on average come down below in a way that we understand how to drive costs or at least manage them consistently.
Okay. I know sort of like when we, in software and startup community and stuff like that, it's obviously this focus, okay, if your product is really good, it'll rise to the top, hopefully. But I mean, in some places, if you just have a bigger marketing spend, you can just blanket in and take that market share, especially if it's something that's sticky and I don't want to have to stop. If I'm a contractor, I'm on TaskRabbit, I'm in the system, I know how it works. I don't want to go to your competitor just maybe because they're slightly better. I mean, which one, do you think that marketing still has that power, that companies that can spend enough and do smart marketing can, even with maybe an inferior product, go out and win?
I think in the early days, maybe.
Okay.
I think quality still will be in a marketplace, still will be the reason why people stay with your service. Quality means lots of things in lots of categories. Quality does mean in specific categories like house cleaning. Quality is a big initiative. Not only what is quality, but how to standardize it. Those are areas in which we've spent a lot of time thinking, and if we can deliver a standard, consistent, high quality cleaning experience, we believe no matter how much marketing you do, and I think our business has proven it, is that we will consistently to be successful. Now, making that grow is then sort of the race.
Right.
That where I think the sharing economy today is starting to enter in, is doing so responsibly, but also understanding that this is not just something that we can grow without any concern for the longevity of what the actual product delivers.
Okay, cool. I think we're out of time, so thank you. Thanks, Rob.
I need some traction. You need some traction.